9893 passed the House of Representatives, it's passed the Senate, and now it goes to the governor for her signature. What a wonderful bill for the people of South Carolina. This thing that's called Common Core will no longer be a part of South Carolina moving forward. The State Department of Education and the Education Oversight Committee, by law, must replace Common Core standards with new state standards. Those standards will be implemented for the following school year. Not this coming school year, because it's a little bit difficult to create new standards, train our teachers, and have them ready for when the school year starts in August. So the next August, for the 15-16 school year, we will have brand new standards that everyone in South Carolina can be proud of. We've regained our vision. We've regained our responsibility. We know what we're supposed to do, and that is to look out for the children of South Carolina. It's our constitutional duty. South Carolina has taken back our constitutional duty to the children of South Carolina to write our own standards to look out for South Carolina. But it was a major battle, but the war has not been won. We are the second state to withdraw from Common Core. The first state was Indiana, but there was some troubles that occurred in Indiana. After they pulled out, they decided to write some new standards, and those standards look very much like Common Core. We don't want that in South Carolina. And the next Secretary of Education will have a great say-so in how these new standards are developed and what they will look like. Whether they will mimic DC standards or whether they will look out for the interests of South Carolina. DC special interest or South Carolina interest. That's what will happen. We won a major battle. Now we need to finish this and win the war. The people of South Carolina will have a choice in the next Secretary of Education. We're going to have someone elected that will look after special interest in DC or look after South Carolina. There's no one in South Carolina that has worked harder to eliminate Common Core standards than Sheri. She was at the forefront, and without her help, without her organizing the grassroots effort that let every South Carolina senator, let every member of the South Carolina House of Representatives know the harmful effects of Common Core, we would not have advanced the bill. I've tried for 3 years to get our state out of Common Core, and the tide shifted greatly this year. Thanks largely to Sheri Pugh's efforts, thanks largely to the grassroots network that she developed around our state. And if she can have that type of an impact working out of her home, think of what type of an impact she can have on South Carolina working out of the State Department of Education as our next Secretary of Education. For that reason, I'm endorsing Sheri Pugh for Secretary of Education. I'm endorsing the person that went a long way to ensure that our state got out of our Common Core standards, and as the next Secretary of Education, she'll help bring it home by ensuring that South Carolina children are what we consider in adopting new standards and not DC special interests. This time I'd like to ask Sheri Pugh if she would come and say a few words about Common Core and what happened yesterday in the South Carolina House of Representatives as the bill was now headed to the governor for her signature.
Thank you, Senator Grooms. We really appreciate your leadership as you ran that bill through the Senate. We could not have done it without you, so we really appreciate your efforts as you led through the Senate and made sure that it got through the House. I want to also tell you that I could not have done this on my own. I appreciate Senator Grooms giving me so much credit, but it was due to the work of thousands of activists across the state, some of whom have joined me here today. So I thank all of the parents and taxpayers who rose up across the state and said, Common Core has got to stop. And I have to tell you, and let me stop first and thank God, because I can tell you that this was a God-sized task. And God really showed up in this effort. When we first started about 14 months ago, the decision makers in South Carolina laughed at us. And many of them looked down their condescending noses at us and said, you will never stop Common Core. This train left the track 3 years ago, and you will never stop it. Well, I can tell you that we are here today to say we have stopped Common Core, and we are pleased, and we thank God for all that has happened in the last 14 months. But as Senator Grooms has said, the fight has not ended. The bill that was passed through the House yesterday does a lot of good. First of all, it gets us out of the Common Core federal-owned Smarter Balance test. And that is an excellent thing, and we are very pleased with that. It also puts in safeguards for data mining for the students of South Carolina. The third thing that it does is it puts in the hands of the next superintendent of education the job of rewriting the standards. And as Senator Grooms pointed out, if we're not careful, if we don't elect the right superintendent of education, we will end up just like Indiana with Common Core under a different name. And that's why it's imperative that we elect the right candidate, the candidate who has led the fight against the Common Core standards, the candidate who has had the tenacity to stand up to the establishment and prove that this was doable, and it has led this fight to its successful end. And we also need the candidate that understands the problems with Common Core. I can tell you, I have been on the road with the candidates in this race, and when they are asked tough questions about Common Core, they are speechless because they don't know. They don't know about the problems. They are simply giving stopping Common Core lip service. So if we elect any other candidate in this race, we will end up like Indiana with Common Core under a different name. Now, one of the other things that I like to tell people is that one of the good things that has come from Common Core is that parents and taxpayers have woken up to what's being taught in public school classrooms. And as the next superintendent of education, one of the things I plan to champion after we have finalized the fight with ending Common Core is I plan to convene a task force that's going to review every textbook that's been adopted in South Carolina. And we're going to reveal the falsehoods and the bias therein. And we're going to take that to the public just as we have with Common Core, and the grassroots movement that has had so much success with Common Core is going to once again put pressure on our legislature to put an end to the taxpayers' dollars funding a liberal indoctrination of our children in the public school classrooms. In addition to that, I can say another good thing that has come from Common Core is that parents and taxpayers are now finally ready to pass meaningful school choice reform in South Carolina, because parents are exiting the public school system at alarming rates due to Common Core. In some of the best school districts in the state, in Lexington 1, I can't tell you the numbers of parents that have told me, in fact, some of them are here today, that have withdrawn their children from the school district there because of Common Core. So these parents are making huge sacrifices. They are having to homeschool their parents or choose private schools to protect their children, and it is affecting their pocketbooks. So they are ready now for school choice. And I don't just mean let the money follow the child, which is what all the other candidates are saying. I am bold enough to say that our state needs a voucher system. We have effective voucher systems in post-secondary education and preschool. We have the Life Voucher Scholarship. We have the preschool voucher programs that are extremely effective. And we should have vouchers for K-12 education. We should allow parents to make choices about the education that best suits their child. And in addition to that, when we institute a voucher system, we will allow the free market to drive the solutions in education. I plan to take the success that I have proven through stopping Common Core to the next level as superintendent of education as I champion these other issues. So I thank you for coming out today to hear about the success of stopping Common Core and about the other issues that I plan to champion as superintendent of education. And I thank all of the supporters that have come out today, and I thank you for helping us to stop Common Core. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Just so I understand, the bill itself is not actually repeal Common Core, right? It essentially says it'll be happening this year, in 2 years now we'll decide what we want to do.
No, the bill does several things. One, it directs the Department of Education and Education Oversight to develop new standards, not amend existing standards, but to adopt new standards. And then the bill goes on to say that those new standards will be implemented in the 15-16 school year. The bill addresses the privacy concerns referred that are part of the Common Core States Initiative. So we secured the data. And we've also said that any standards not adopted by the state of, any standards not adopted or not created within South Carolina, so if they would have to have a affirmative vote by both houses of the General Assembly. So if something like Common Core ever happened again, where the State Department of Education and the State Board of Education believes we should go with standards developed by DC Special Interests, the General Assembly would have to approve those before they could be implemented. So yes, the bill does get us out of Common Core. It doesn't change Common Core. New standards must be adopted and implemented.
If it isn't Common Core, then what type of standards would you like to see implemented in school districts here in South Carolina?
We had some of the best standards in the nation under our past standards, and they were recognized to that effect. And there was a process by which they could be amended every so many years to meet the ever-changing needs of our schools. Unfortunately, the State Board of Education and the Education Oversight Committee decided to scrap our old standards and bring in something from out of state. And the reason was there were dollars tied to that. To be college and career ready is what they said. But when our teachers started looking at these new standards, once they started implementing them this year, there was a big disconnect with what folks said they did and what they actually did. So South Carolina educators are such an important part of what our standards should be. They're the first line with our students, that they know what works, they know what does not work. So for us to have the type of standards that we need, they need to be driven by South Carolina educators, and the State Department of Education, under the leadership of the Secretary of Education, is the one in charge of that process. So I want to make sure our standards reflect South Carolina values instead of DC values.
Let me follow up on that too. I agree with Senator Grooms and everything he just said, but in addition to that, in building upon the very good standards that we have with the past standards, I'd also like to see us look at pointing our education standards more toward a classical education in South Carolina. And it's a proven effective model of learning, and we will be looking at that should I be elected Superintendent of Education.
Any more questions? Thank y'all for coming out today.